In the last video, we did the diagnostics and troubleshooting on why the bike wouldn't run. We found that the fuel pump was completely gummed up with years of grime built up from ethanol and gasoline mixture. I made a statement in the last video where ethanol is prone to popping hoses off and getting everything soft, and that is true, but not in this case. There was no evidence of swollen hoses or hoses that had popped off. It was just simply years of fuel turning into varnish and rust. And we had replaced the pump and cleaned the fuel pressure regulator, clean all the parts of the in-tank, and then get this thing running. Unfortunately, when it came back up, it was only running on one cylinder. The front cylinder wasn't firing because the injector was actually clogged, so that cleared out too. So now she's running well on both cylinders. Let's back up and show you how we got it. I'm going to try and show you how this pump goes back together. So this is the old pickup screen. It kind of crushed it and stuffed it up in this housing. The new pump came with a new screen. It's slightly smaller. It actually came with a variety of screens. So I'm using the one that's the closest. It came with a really big long one, came with a flat one, came with one that doesn't even fit on the outlet or the inlet of the pump. The diameter is too big, so that's not the right one. So the one I have in here is the best fit, and I'll show you where this goes, or I'll try to. This is difficult to capture on video. I need two hands to do this when I had to hold the camera. So let me see what I can show you here. Fuel pump assembly cleaned up nicely using my gunk parts cleaner there. Soaked this for a couple of days. Came out really nice. The fuel pressure regulator here, I got it back assembled, and it cleaned up. This little white plastic piece here was completely plugged. How this works is, this is the return port right here where the fuel comes back from the engine. So it's a recirculating system. So the fuel pressure, the pump provides pressure through this line, goes out to the fuel injectors on the engine, and whatever the engine doesn't use comes back into this port here through this pressure regulator, through the black connection. There's a spring-loaded device in here, and any excess pressure or fuel volume comes back off the top in through this white plastic through this little hole. And this thing was completely plugged, and the spring mechanism wouldn't move. So that's all cleaned up, so I got to reassemble that. And then got the new fuel pump here. This is the Parts Unlimited kit sold through All Balls Racing. It's pretty much identical. There's no part number or any markings on the new one, but it's the exact same diameter, same inlet and outlet. It's basically identical. So we're just going to reassemble this and see if we can get this engine fired up. Stand by. So here's the new pump. It's simply held into place by these two clamps here. It slides right into this. The electrical connection faces out, the fuel outlet faces towards the center of the unit, and then she snaps right down into there. I don't know if you heard that satisfying click. And then at the very bottom where the outlet is, you can see the inlet here, and then this little tab. This is the screen that came with it that I'm going to use, slightly smaller than the original screen, but the original screen was so jammed up in there, I don't think it was really had a lot of surface area. This one probably has the same. But there's your inlet and there's your alignment dowel. So we just snap this into place over the fuel inlet, and that little alignment dowel has a little capture washer on it. And there, that just pops into place. Now, to get this back together to the base, you can see that the screen kind of wants to spill over and stick out of the cavity that the pump well sits in. So I kind of have to bend this. The backside of the screen I'm going to tuck up underneath into the housing here. Like so back side of it, and then the front side of it, I'm actually going to bend the opposite direction and put into the well right here. And let's see if we can get this guy closed. There we go. Okay, that's closed. So that's the pump mounted. Now this plastic part, this whole plastic assembly, which houses the pump and the regulator, and wires and all that, and the ground. This is the ground strap and the strap that holds the fuel filter in place. This all gets mounted to the aluminum base plate with these little friction washers. So they slide over these posts right here, and you just push them down and they hold this whole assembly together. So let's see if we can do that and get that on camera. Let me tilt this a little bit, see what we can capture. There we go. So I just gotta, so I'm gonna place the washer, spring washer over there, and I've got my long nose angled pliers, and I'm just gonna push down on the perimeter. Let me get this thing seated. Actually, it looks like these this needle nose is too big to fit down in there. I'm going to rotate it around and try the other side because I have a little more room on the other side. There. Okay. Make sure that this, yep, that's down all the way. Alright, same thing. I'm going to put the washer over the post. I'm quite surprised there's no screws or nuts or anything. It's just these little spring clamps. So we're just going to push down on this guy. It's just a friction slip that holds this assembly together. And that's about it. So there's two large diameter ones, and again I'm going to have to come back and fix that one, and then there's two smaller diameter ones. This guy here, and that's a little slightly smaller diameter. Can you see that? Yeah, that's that here. Try it again with my angled. Yep, there we go. Okay, my screwdriver here, I'm just going to push this down. Oop. Nope. Oop, I can't see what I'm doing. These were not really designed to be rebuilt. This is just kind of a hokey design. And then we rotate it around and do this one. Same. I've got the base plate all attached. Now it's time to take this fuel pressure regulator and get it attached. I noticed as I was preparing this, the little O-ring that seals that has a little tear in it. I don't know if you could see that. And we're going to have to replace it. So I found one that matches. And we're going to put it on here first. And I'm going to... This is actually held in exactly the same way with just those little spring washer clips. You see that? Yep. And it just sits down in the well. Get that O-ring. Actually, O-ring's not lining up. I'm gonna put the O-ring in the well first. Like so. Yep, you can see that O-ring down in there. And then we'll put this guy in. There. Nice. And then again, two of these little spring washers, or I don't know what they call them, and they go right on the outside post to hold this fuel pressure regulator down. go. That's one. Second one's on the back side. I'm going to have to get creative. I'll be right back. Alright, the assembly's back attached together. Next thing is electrical connection for the fuel pump. Simply clicks into place. That, and then there's also a little ground wire that grounds the fuel filter. The fuel filter is metal, and this is submerged in the tank, so they don't want any static discharge going on, so they ground anything that's metal. So even the top of the fuel pressure regulator, which is a metal clamp, is grounded so that you don't have any static discharge. So let's take care of that. So electrical, oh, and I also have to reconnect the outlet of the hose, the fuel outlet to the hose, which is the inlet to the filter. So I need a clamp for that, so I'll be right back. All right. You see that? Ground wire, mounting screw into the metal filter. So now we're all set here. We can put this back in the tank, fill her up with fuel, see what happens. Oh, also just a note, I did replace the mounting base O-ring here. It's not really an O-ring, it's kind of a custom shape. It looks like a U-shaped ring or X ring or something. So hopefully we won't have any leaks. And Mike will run. I'll be right back. Alright, ready to put the fuel pump assembly back in. Got the tank peeled back in the service position, which is pretty neat. This tank has actually got the hinge pin here has actually got a quick disconnect that you can just pull out, pull the pin, and the whole tank comes off. But they give you enough room, so I've got it flipped back. It's actually resting on the regulator rectifier with a rag so it doesn't scratch. And you can leave it there and do all your servicing right from here, which is pretty neat. There's two, let me walk around the other side of the bike so you get a better view of this. So there's two, this nipple here is the tank vent that goes to the evaporative canister. This one here is the one that goes to the overflow drain. In case you overflow the tank into the cap assembly, it drains down to the ground. And then you've got your fuel out and your fuel back in return lines, which are quick disconnect onto the pump assembly. So I've got this line disintegrated when I pulled it apart, so I got to clean this up and clean up the end of the tube here, and then we'll reassemble. But yeah, this bike's really easy to work on. I like the way that you can just peel the tank back and get to everything. All right, give me a minute. This fuel pump assembly really only goes in one way. Due to the way that the filter and the lines are oriented, this has to kind of go in. It's self-explanatory and really only fit in one way. So go just like that, and then the holes line up. You put your screws in, and then we hook up our pipes. Be right back. Got the fuel filter assembly all bolted in, ready for the lines. Basically just click and click, and that's that. Then we got electrical, which I need 2 hands for, and then the two, the evaporative and the drain lines, and I'll do that when I tip this up. So the next step is going to be to fill her up with gas and see if she'll fire. First try to start the Ducati Monster. Fuel tank is full, new pump is in, doesn't seem to be any leaks. See if we can hear the fuel pump prime. Yep, I can hear the pump running. Give it a couple of primes, get the air out of the lines. I can hear it gurgling and some air coming out. Let's give it a crank. It's got to be air in the lines. Sounds fine. Sounds like it's only running one cylinder. The cylinder is pretty cold. Front cylinder's not firing, only the back one's getting hot. So we probably have a clogged injector. So I'll swap the injector to see if the problem follows. We're going to do a little test of these injectors here. So if you recall in my last video, we did the troubleshooting of the bike and it was only running on one cylinder. And I speculate it's because one of these injectors is plugged. I was going to swap the injectors to see if the problem followed the injector, but I pulled them out to swap them and I figured I'd do some checking there. So checking the resistance of the coil here, we got 15.65 ohms on this one coil, which shows that's good. It's not open, it's not shorted, so this injector electrically checks out. Let's check the next one, and then I have a 12 volt battery here. We'll put some voltage on it and see if we can hear these things clicking. All right, we got the second one hooked up, and we got 15.75 ohms. So both of these injectors check out electrically. They are electrically good. Doesn't mean that they're physically able to flow. So let's hook them up to the battery and see what we can find out. All right, I got two terminals connected to the fuel injector, and then I got my 12 volt battery here. Doesn't matter whether you do negative to positive, positive to negative. It's just a solenoid. Polarity doesn't matter. So we'll click it, and this guy clicks. You can hear it. That one's actually clicking. So that one's flowing, or opening at least. And that's the rear cylinder. The problem we were having was the front cylinder wasn't running. So let's switch it and try the other one. All right, got the other one hooked up. Touch the terminal, and we got nothing. No clicking. So this injector is stuck closed. So we're gonna soak this in some parts cleaner and see if we can get this thing freed up. All right, here we are several hours later after soaking in parts cleaner and using some compressed air and some carburetor cleaner to blow these out, and you can hear it's now clicking. Now, let's see, can you hear that? Yep. So now it's opening. So we're going to reassemble them in the bike and see if she'll fire. I'm actually going to put them in the other way. I'm going to put the one that came out of the front cylinder in the back cylinder and vice versa, just to see if it's another problem with the bike. Perhaps it's an ignition problem. At least this will, if it still doesn't run on both cylinders, it'll move it to the back cylinder if it's an injector problem. All right, I got the injectors cleaned out, and I actually put them back in place because this thing would not stop dripping fuel. The fuel comes out of the pump and it feeds one of the injectors, loops back around and feeds the other one. It actually doesn't matter which way you have them connected. It's just a continuous loop. So again, I got the injectors cleaned out. They're both operating now according to the bench test. I don't know if they're flowing anything. And how they attach here is these. Do you remember Bing, the old carburetor company? Evidently they're still in business. They're still making fuel injection pieces. So these Bing heads of the injector are captured with these Torx screws, and they hold the injector down. And there's two O-rings, one on the top of the injector, one on the bottom. So to get the injector out, you just take this Torx bit out, take this Bing coupling off. You don't have to disconnect the hoses, and then the injector will just pop right out of the intake manifold. You got to do the electrical connection as well. And that's that. So the injectors are back in. My dripping has stopped, thankfully, and I'm going to reconnect these electrically. And we're going to put the airbox back together. I would like to test fire this without the airbox, but you really can't, because the coil for the front cylinder is actually mounted underneath the airbox, so you can't really fire it without the airbox. So we're going to put the injectors back on here. Let's see. These injectors actually can spin because they're on the O-ring, so they'll actually spin in place. So let's see. There we go. And this one is just rotated down to make room for the airbox. This one can sit straight. And now we get the airbox, and here's the coil. You got the low voltage side, high voltage side, so this has to go back on as the airbox goes in. The airbox is actually connected with this mount tab, and then there's, where is it? There's a stud that sticks up here. Here, this guy is this, and then there's another one on this side that mount the airbox. So let's see if we can get this finagle back into place. Actually, I got to put on the intake boot for the rear cylinder first. I'm actually going to leave it loose so I can rotate it if I need to. Got the airbox in. It's always fiddly dealing with the boots and all the connections, but got the airbox in. Just pop the air filter in here, and look at that. All 800 cc's has to breathe through that little hole. Side. Go. The front clips are missing. I got to get some of those. And then we'll drop the tank and see if she'll start. Alright, prop rod comes out. Tank comes down. Little clip. Normally this clip is supposed to be spring loaded, and the spring is, I think it's a little lubrication, but if we do that, I generally can get the clip in. Yeah, that's that. Let's see if we got any gas left in the tank. Very little. We'll get some more gas. Fill her up, buttercup. Ooh, right to the brim. What was the coffee commercial that they used to send? Good to
fill it to the rim with brim.
Rim with brim. There you go. Okay, so we should now be able to fire on 2 cylinders here. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Sounds like a Ducati to me.
Next up is fork seals, timing belts, and Desmo valve adjustment. So stay tuned for those.